All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. We're talking college football, and it's finally here. It's week one. There's a hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico, and there's another one in the Atlantic Ocean. But the man who made the best scientific discovery during the summer is he can tell when a pig is hot. It's bacon. My co-host, Fresh. How you doing, buddy?
I think you can tell it's bacon when it smells so good. But hey, Haps, I'm doing great. It is week one. The appetizer round of week zero is gone. We got full slate of football across the board. And what even is even better about this episode is that these games I'm about to mention, we're not even going to talk about. We're not talking about ECU, Michigan, UTSA, Houston, South Alabama, Tulane, Louisville, Georgia Tech, Nebraska, Minnesota, Virginia, Tennessee, Fresno State, Purdue, Washington State, Colorado State, Oregon State, San Jose State, Clemson, Duke, Toledo, Illinois, Texas Tech, Wyoming, or Coastal Carolina, UCLA. Those games we're not even going to talk about. That's how loaded this slate is. I'm so excited.
Yeah, it's a great opening weekend slate. You don't have maybe one or two juggernaut games. We'll talk about that too. We have a couple that we're really looking forward to as I'm going through my notes here. But it's crazy to think we're starting another season, and before you know it, we're going to be talking about rivalry week because this goes by so fast once we start talking about regular season. But you know what? We're no longer talking about expansion. We're no longer talking about realignment. We're no talking about the playoff system or NIL stuff. It's actually talking about games on the field, which I prefer to do. And again, it's going to have this great slate of games that we got from starting really on Thursday, all going through the whole Labor Day weekend.
Yeah, lock yourself into your couch, get some beverages of choice, and be prepared for football.
All right, so let's go to our first game of the week here, Fresh. We're going out, and I think all eyes are on this game for kind of different reasons. We're talking about Colorado traveling to TCU to start the season. Right now, at time of record, TCU is a 21-point favorite in this game. They're the home team, but this whole weekend to me is kind of what I call the showcase weekend, Fresh. This is an opportunity for us to we've read preview magazines, we've listened to podcasts, listened to all of these other things. This is the time where you showcase what you have early on the season, get some buzz about you, get some talking. Guess what? They've done that in Colorado. Anytime you hire Deion Sanders as your head coach, you're going to create some buzz. The man is pure charisma as a head coach. Great job at that part. Oh, yeah. They wind up transferring in almost their entire roster. Last I checked recently on the 2-deep depth chart, on offense, they have only 3 kids that are not brand new players on offense and 1 kid who is not a brand new player on defense there. And then you got a team like TCU coming off making it to the national title game, a truly Cinderella season for them, running into Georgia at the end of the season. But you got to give a lot of credit to what Sonny Dykes did last year. Max Duggan is gone. We're going to have to talk about Chandler Morris being back. He was the starter last year, but a lot going on here. Colorado, though, I think that everyone wants to talk about it, but we're talking about stuff we don't know yet.
That's exactly right, Seth. And you kind of look at it, you mentioned the 2 deep. There's 86 new players on this team. That's the most in FBS since 2018. 53 transfer players, which also led all of FBS. This is complete program, a mindset, a culture overhaul. We saw spring practice. They played the game in the snow. And even I think after that ball game, 12 kids, 15 kids at the portal before they even took a shower. So you have no idea what to expect other than Shadur Sanders, the quarterback, and obviously Deion Son, and then Travis Hunter, corner/wide receiver, playmaker extraordinaire. You kind of know what they did at Jackson State. There was a reason why Sanders was a 4-star recruit even before he went there. There's a reason why Hunter was the number 1 overall recruit in the country and went to Jackson State. The kids can play. I want to see what they do in this football game and what kind of show they put on. But who else is going to step up? Who's going to actually rise to the occasion? Because I don't think this is a 1-year thing where Deion's going to be there for a year and he's going to run away. This is, I'm going to come in, completely overhaul the culture. I'm going to showcase and make you guys want to be here. And if you don't show up in game 1, you might not play in the second half. You might not play week 2. You've got to bring it every single way because Deion wants to win. All the guys around him want to win. So this is going to be, how fast does that entire culture gel? How do the players react to each other going into an environment like Fort Worth? Carter Amos Stadium there, and TCU, the defending runner-up. This is a fever pitch to moment where Colorado might actually outplay their own potential because they're going to play with extra juice in the opening game, and they might look better than what they are as the season rolls on, or they come out sloppy, dysfunctional, and then they actually truly gel as a team midway through the year and get better. I said earlier, I expect this team to be better in the second half of the season when they finally start getting together and figuring it out. I think they're going to be very choppy in this opening game. They're going to play with a lot of motion early, but you cannot expect this team to come out there fluid, locked in, everyone being on the same page from the get go. That's going to be very tough. But roster turnover is not just a Colorado issue right now. It's also from TCU. They lost Duggan, as you mentioned. Kendre Miller's gone. Quentin Johnson, Davis is gone. A host of other players, Tomlinson, the corner. They have to fill out that roster as well. They've got guys who are returning more than Colorado. They still got to plug a lot of holes. Who's going to show up? Chandler Morris obviously won the job last year and then got hurt. Duggan took over. What's he going to show? Now the expectation of being where Duggan was a Heisman finalist. Now you're actually at that tier of you're the starter. You have got to be a Heisman finalist to be able to match that same season technically that Duggan had last year. That's where the expectation is for you in this offense. So what does Sonny Dykes actually do? Can he actually be consistent at this program? He's been at Cal. He wasn't consistent. Now he's back at TCU, had the 1 year hit. Can he be consistent? The Big 12, as we all seen, especially with Texas and Oklahoma leaving after this year, it's ripe for the taking. You got to make a statement that this league is still yours. You didn't even win the Big 12 last year. You lost to Kansas State. You've got to find a way to actually own the league. This starts right here by beating Colorado and beating them decisively. You can't come out here and flop, and everyone's going to be like, well, last year definitely was a fluke. TCU is not for real. So the pressure's on them to produce. The pressure's on the players to show up and play a Deion standard. So this is actually going to be a very high-octane football game. Outside of that, with so much roster turnover, we really can't tell you offensive line, defensive line, which receiver is going to light up and show up and scheme-wise. That's all up in the air. We're going to find that out, probably about 4 o'clock Saturday afternoon. The 20 points, the 21, that's a pretty large spread for a bunch of unknowns. I will take Colorado in the points. I think TCU wins outright, but I think they don't cover. They will not cover the spread. That's a lot of points to put up there against a lot of unknowns. But I think TCU maybe wins by like 17, but they do not cover the 21.
Yeah, the eyes of the nation are going to be watching Coach Sanders and, that entire team, from everything from Travis Hunter to Joe Horn Jr., which I love that his kid's now in the NFL because he was one of the first wide receivers I ever drafted when I was playing fantasy football as a kid. But Fresh, you're going into Fort Worth, and anytime we're talking about a game in Fort Worth, we keep Fort Worth funky like a monkey, baby. So we're going to get really funky in this game. I'm staying away from this game. You're right. Funky things happen in Fort Worth, and 21 for a bunch of unknowns is a little bit weird for me. I could see a lot of things happening in this game. The interesting thing for me, though, is everyone wants to talk about Max Duggan. He's gone. Chandler Morris having to replace. He was the starter at the beginning of the year, and he goes down with injury. While, yes, I can say that's a big storyline, I really think the really big storyline is the loss of Miller, and Imani Bailey is now their starting running back there. The kid was averaging 8 yards a carry in a very limited duty last year, and I want to see what he's going to do with more opportunities. He's a smaller running back, about 5'8", kind of like a bowling ball type of kid. I like the idea behind him, but I really need to see it in action. I need to see how he's going to run behind this offensive line. If that offensive line is going to be able to get the push. I think where TCU is going to win this game is going to be in the trenches. Yeah, Deion Sanders made the big splashes with the skill position players and getting them to transfer in. But football's still a game that's going to be won and lost in the trenches. I think that's where TCU is going to get the advantage. I would pick TCU to win. The point thing is what scares me. I stay away from that on there. There's too much unknown for me there. But I really think that we're going to have a fairly good idea on where this Colorado team is at the end of week 1. I think if they go in and pull the upset against TCU, because everyone's going to say, oh, well, TCU lost a bunch. Guys, this was the runner-up to the national title game, okay? Even though, yes, you did lose a few players from this team, that doesn't mean that there's absolutely no talent. Those 4 or 5 players you lost to the NFL are not the whole reason you made it to the national championship game. There's a lot of talent still there. Sonny Dykes is a really, really good coach. I don't want maybe say he's a great coach yet because I need to see him do it. Like you talked about consistency fresh. I got to see him do it year in and year out. But I still have a lot of respect for Sonny Dykes. So this game is something I'm going to be interested in. I'm going to watch it. I really am going to kind of more enjoy this game of football because this is our first look of what Colorado could be. Talk time is over. It's now all about put up or shut up for the Buffs. But we'll see what they do here because, again, I'm staying away from this game. But, hey, there are a lot more people that have a better read on it than I do. It's just kind of how I'm thinking about it.
I mean, one thing before you head on to another game is I think the mental fortitude for Colorado, no matter what happens, if they come in and they play competitive, how does that build their psyche going into next week at home in the
Right.
opener versus Nebraska? Now, if they get blown out and they get destroyed, how does this team, a bunch of, cast-offs, if you will, for lack of a better term, how do they come together and find a way to not get blown out against Nebraska and so on and so forth and stem the tide? So not just how this game goes and the ebbs and the flows, but how the game in the second half and then how they do it, depending on the outcome, how this team grows. It's going to be very intriguing to follow.
All right, Fresh. Let's go to our next game of the week. Hey, this game won the poll of the week on Twitter or X or whatever they call it these days. You guys know we're not hip enough to really understand everything that's going on. I do like the new X symbol. That's just me. But make sure you guys are following us on Twitter so you have a voice on those polls. We let the fans decide. Overwhelming winning the poll. It was West Virginia traveling to Happy Valley to play the Penn State Nittany Lions. Penn State is currently a 20.5-point favorite in this game. I think that's a little low on my end here, Fresh, but what say you? I'll let you go first about West Virginia Penn State here.
Well, first of all, I love the regional kind of game here. We got, coming down from the mountains, going to the Nittany Mountain, coming down from the mountains in West Virginia, going to the Nittany Mountains there in Pennsylvania. Two blue collar, fan bases getting after it in the opening game. That right there gives you excitement and adventure. But from there, I think it stops. This is going to be a Nittany Lion beatdown, and if it isn't, that raises more questions about Penn State and if they actually truly are capable of taking down Ohio State and or Michigan this season. This is a ripe game where you've got to come out. You have the national spotlight, NBC's game of the premier game of the week, kickoff game for their coverage of the Big Ten. You got to come out and you got to light it up and you got to take care of business. The hot Neil Brown's seat is already super super hot right now. You could really basically light it on fire if you come out there and put up 35 in the first half and really send a message. The only hope for West Virginia, and I have respect for the Mountaineers. They have a great program, great fan base, love that fun stuff. But the talent on this football team is not what it was in the past, folks. And I think that's where spades are spades. We've got to figure that out. Neil Brown has missed that few opportunities, but the one thing he has done is built a very, very good offensive line. That offensive line at West Virginia is probably going to be top 8 in the country. If they can run the football and be successful and hold off that Penn State defense, again, raises question about Penn State's defense, but it shows that they can be able to dictate a football game and keep them alive and playing bigger foes. Because it's only going to get bigger for both these teams as they move on. If this offensive line for West Virginia can show up on Saturday night and keep them in the football game, protect Garrett Green, run the football downhill, maintain time possession, it gives them a fighting chance. Because if you let the duos of running backs there for Penn State get going and Drew Alar and that passing attack get going, along with that defense, and it could get really disgusting real early and be a Penn State party. So you've got to trust your offensive line, run the football, and show up from opening kickoff, or the season could become really long, really, really quick for West Virginia. I don't care what the spread is. Penn State's covering, and they're covering by a mile. Nittany Lions are beating it down.
Yeah, Fresh. Neil Brown, I think underrated statement of the year is that his seat is the hot seat. I would say he's definitely going to be the first coach fired. I do not think that he is going to make it to the end of the season. I feel bad saying that because both me and you really love Mountaineer football. I really think highly of Morgantown as a college location. It's a great place to see a game. I think also, West Virginia fans are some of the most passionate fans out there. I absolutely love my interaction with West Virginia fans. So I feel bad saying this, but it really is a rough situation. You're right. They got the offensive lines back together. The whole band is back on that one. They got a fairly decent running back in C.J. Donaldson from last year. 6 yards a carry for him, 8 touchdowns. Had some success on the ground, but maybe that was kind of it. You want to go back and talk about Garrett Green, the quarterback there. They got to do a lot of things to beat this Penn State. This Nittany Lion team offense is going to get all of the headlines. People know how I feel about Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen. I love both Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen. I think they're probably maybe the two best running back combination in the entire country. I would take them over almost every other set of running backs, and I'm talking about 1-2. Like, there's a couple of individual guys I like a little bit better, but when you're talking about a duo of like that whole thunder and lightning, crash and bam, I don't know what our adjectives you want me to use here, Fresh, but something along those lines. Those two running backs are absolutely phenomenal. Drew Alar, he's getting his first kind of look this year. He, sat last year. I love the fact that he kind of sat behind someone like Sean Clifford coming in, but I'm glad Clifford's time is over at Penn State. We got to see what James Franklin has, because for the last 2 years, we've been saying this is a quiet Penn State team is a very scary Penn State team. This Penn State team probably has more talent on it than we've seen in years past. They got an amazing left tackle over there. They got a probably arguably the top cornerback coming out in this draft in Kalen King. People really, really like him. I say the tape shows something a little bit different. Not that he's bad by any means. I think he's really, really good. I just don't know if I'd say he's the top cornerback right now. So this defense has all the power to shut down a West Virginia offense that maybe will be reliant on the ground game the whole way. I'm with you, Fresh. I'm hammering the Penn State, and I'm taking that 20.5 points right there. I think the Penn State's going to roll in this game, and they'll be taking country roads all the way back to Morgantown.
I mean, this is a chance. It's a national spotlight game. It's not going to be hidden on Big Ten Network or something like that, or FS1 like this. It's on NBC, and it's going to be on Peacock. You have a chance to really showcase in your program and setting the tone and sending a message to start the season. I think that's in James Franklin's mindset. It's a night game. It's going to be packed, and you've got to go out there and set it and make sure everyone knows that you are fully reckoned to be ready to be reckoned with for the whole season.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Fresh, let's go to our third game this weekend. We're talking about UNC versus South Carolina. This game is going to be played in Charlotte. The Carolinas versus each other. Tragedy striking over there in UNC. We got praying for everyone that was affected by what went on there. Sometimes it's great that we have football for a little bit. For a couple hours, you get to escape from reality for a little bit. Doesn't change the impact that they have going on over there. So our hearts and prayers go out to those affected by the events that happened at UNC. But let's focus over on the football side of things. Fresh, again, Showcase Saturday to me. What UNC team are we going to get? And what South Carolina team are we going to get? I really found this fascinating. As I was digging into this, Fresh, I went back and I looked at Drake May versus Spencer Rattler. And I don't say that as much of the makeup of this game, but looking at their projections in their careers. It wasn't too long ago that we were talking about Spencer Rattler as a possible number 1 overall pick, one of the top quarterbacks that could be coming out. He had a phenomenal year over there in Oklahoma a couple years back, and then all of a sudden kind of fell off. Drake May, kind of the same thing, had a phenomenal year last year. He's now the talk of the town. Could be one of the top if he has a great year this year. I think Caleb Williams has that number 1 overall pick kind of sewn up, but hey, if Drake May has just an amazing year, maybe he can take it away from him. I got the comparison at that point for the two. Like the level of hype between these two kids are interesting. But Fresh, I'm going to ask you this question, and as we get to this game here and break it down a little bit, which one is going to have whoever loses this game, which one is going to have the bigger long-term impact for the rest of the season? Because I think this is a huge, huge keystone type game for UNC and South Carolina.
That's an amazing question. I think it's going to have a bigger hit to South Carolina because I think the ACC is a little bit easier for UNC to navigate. And if South Carolina and Rattler shows that maybe he's not the answer and has a struggle, he goes back to his first half of 2022. That puts them in a deer in headlights situation because they got this game, they got a week, and then they travel to Athens to take on the Dogs. And last time Rattler played Georgia, he got eaten alive. He's got to have a good game to get the momentum going. and to build off of that. Because if he comes out struggling and North Carolina's defense gets after it, which Gene Chiswick, if your defense gives up less than 30 points, I think that's a win for North Carolina because that defense has been atrocious for years. Maybe you finally figured it out because if you haven't, you might be back to working for SEC Network. But I think South Carolina, Spencer Rattler needs that confidence boost. If he can come out and get going and have a successful football game, whether they win or lose, I don't think that's the truly thing. Is he comes out and plays confident because it shows that they have something to go in there. If he comes out and struggles and they lose, there's going to be a lot of worries, a lot of talk for 2 weeks he's going to deal with leading up to playing the Dogs. So I think more pressure on Spencer Rattler to come out and show up. Because last year in the Gator Bowl here, they came out on fire, and then he struggled down the stretch, allowed Notre Dame to sort of get some momentum, and Notre Dame came back and won the football game. He couldn't be consistent as through the whole football game. He had ups and downs, had an early start. Where can that go? They went down last year, went down to Gainesville. They got shut out. But then they come out and they blow the doors off of Tennessee and they beat Clemson. When is Spencer Rattler just going to be consistent? I think that's his whole entire career. 2020 at Oklahoma was really good. 21 started off first game, it was okay. The Texas game, they got smoked. They benched him. Caleb Williams came in and took off from there. He lost his job. Where's consistency going to come from Rattler? We haven't seen those major issues from May yet because he only had that 1 year. But Rattler right now has shown us that he cannot be a consistent quarterback. And if he gets any issues starting off early, that might become a psyche thing where he has to sort of regain his confidence. It's a new offensive coordinator at both these schools. So that's also who's your communication? Who's in that head trying to talk to that quarterback and get them squared away? There's talent across the board on both teams. Both these quarterbacks are going to drive their team's success or put them on the struggle bus. And so that's where I'm looking at this football game. Which of these guys comes out there, plays focused, plays loose, and also how do they react to that offensive coordinator, quarterback coach that's new in their heads, keeping them confident, keeping them in the down and distance, and maybe working with them. What do they like? What don't they like? Both these teams have had success on offense. They've had some players leave their programs. But when you get the two Carolinas together, we've seen it in bowl games, we've seen it in these same kind of kickoff classics in Charlotte, it becomes a bloodbath fun fest because there are just points, there's plays. These teams don't like each other. The fan bases hate each other even more. It's a quiet, hated rivalry. You have Carolina and you have Clemson, North Carolina State. They hate each other. No, but North Carolina, South Carolina, deep down, they do not like each other. So the fans, the team, the energy in that building is going to be there. Which of these quarterbacks can harness that energy and get their teams to play focus? I think it's going to be great. And I'm also, like I mentioned before, I want to see what North Carolina's defense does. Gene Chiswick, you were sending them last year to change it. They didn't improve. They got worse. This is your second year there. How can you get this defense at North Carolina to play better? They have a proud tradition of players there. How can you get your guys to get off the field and shut down the opposing offense? You can come out and show improvement. That makes me feel better about your chances in the ACC. If you come out and, again, look confused, miscommunications everywhere, no pass rush, no coverage, can't tackle, it's going to be a long year in Chapel Hill for that Tar Heel team. And honestly, I hate to say it, but if it gets bad, it could even be Mac Brown's last year if this team does not get turned around. There's too many expectations there to win. When it comes down to it, though, I like the way that Shane Beamer gets the Gamecocks to play. South Carolina will win this football game, and they will win it going away, and they will beat Carolina. South Carolina Gamecocks take it, and they jump into the top 25 after this week, and it will really put a shocker to North Carolina's program, but also a really big boost to what Shane Beamer's doing there in Columbia.
So, Fresh, I thought while you were going through everything there, I was continuing to think in my head, which one to me is going to have a bigger impact. And to me, it's if UNC loses this game, it pretty much is going to cause a lot of pressure later on in the season. Not only UNC is absolutely 100% going to have to knock off Clemson later on this year. If they don't beat Clemson, that their complete season is, they don't have the opportunity to play Florida State this year. I mean, the rest of their schedule, they really don't have. I mean, Miami, whoop-de-doo. Duke, okay, they're a better team here. Clemson, NC State, okay, we don't know about them. Their schedule, like, if they lose this game, I'm looking for that big boy matchup for them to kind of rectifying this loss and saying, okay, we're better than what this opening weekend loss was. And you got to have an opponent on there that's going to give you that notoriety. South Carolina loses this game, and then 2 weeks from now they go into Athens and beat Georgia. Guess what? No one gives a hoot and a half about a loss to North Carolina.
Nope.
Trust me, that's going to completely overpower it. That's why I think this game is going to mean so much more North Carolina. I'm interested to see, is May going to be the lean rusher for UNC again? Like, to me, that scares me year in and year out. When the quarterback's your leading rusher, is he taking unnecessary hits? Is he going to go down for an injury? Because, again, Drake May is going to be the straw that stirs the drink for these guys, and he's got to protect himself. You know, you got a great running back name in British Brooks. Love that name, because we always, as we get through college football, we start learning the interesting names here. I need to see more out of him. But really, on this, UNC's got a great defender. Get this name in your head very quick. Weak side linebacker Cedric Gray. He's a senior this year, had over 100 tackles last year. Is going to be a real leader of that defense for UNC. If they want to get better than that 30.9 points per game that they're giving up, look to him to have a huge year and see what else that he's going to be able to do. For South Carolina, I know we got Spencer Rattler, Antoine Juice Wells. I was actually on a space the other day talking to a guy who handles a lot of, draft stuff, and he likes Juice Williams second to Marvin Harrison Jr. And I said, he had some critiques about Xavier Worthy in Texas. I asked him about the two guys out there in Washington. We'll talk about them here. What about Buka? He says he really likes Juice Wells here. I went back and I looked at some tape due to his recommendation, and he's right. That kid's extremely talented. So I'm going to be interested to watch him here. Fresh, the spread right now is UNC minus 2.5. I'm with you. I think South Carolina has more to play for in this game. I like South Carolina winning this game here, and I'd take South Carolina those points there. I think even if they lose, it's going to be a close back and forth game. I don't think UNC is going to be able to put the pedal to the metal all the way and just kind of run through this game and run through South Carolina. But I think that South Carolina is just going to have a little too much for the Tar Heels, and I'm going to go with South Carolina winning it.
Like, I agree with you. Like, it's this kind of game, folks, that you're going to turn on for the fourth quarter, because at the other 7 o'clock kicks, 7:30 kicks, they might become blowouts. And this is the one you're like, oh, we got a game. We're going to switch over. We're going to watch this thing on ABC and watch the fourth quarter. So make sure you tune in.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Make sure you tune into every single game this week. So let's go out. This is a Thursday night game. So if you're listening to this, please just jump ahead and miss it. Hey, I'll take this for a moment. Folks, if you are watching this on the YouTube, hit that subscribe button before we go on to that next game. We are on our track. We hit 250. We've blown past 250 subscribers. We're on our way to 500 subscribers by October. That's our goal right now. Help us out. It doesn't cost you anything. It just helps out the channel. Hit that subscribe button, and then maybe just forget about it, because you'll see it. No, watch our videos every single week. We appreciate everything like that. And that's all I'm going to say on that one. But let's go to the Thursday night game this week. And it is the Florida Gators traveling to Utah. And the Utes here, man. I think the big question in the room is Cam Rising. Fresh, right before we went on record, both of us are scouring the internet here, trying to find an update on Cam Rising's status. He tore his ACL last year. As Fresh said so eloquently, Kyle Whittingham ain't giving us nothing. And we were right. Kyle Whittingham's not going to tell anybody what's going on about Cam Rising until probably about 30 minutes till kickoff here. Cam Rising did go to a reporter, say he's feeling pretty damn good. We'll see. I think that will change the scope of the game. If Rising plays, I think this is a huge win for the Utes. Florida, we'll see. Fresh, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, Haps, before we even get to the game on the field, this is actually a historic event, folks, and I'm not being sarcastic.
It is.
This game at Utah for the Florida Gators is the first true non-conference road game. We're going to take out neutral site games. We're going to take out bowl games. It's the first true non-conference road game outside of the state of Florida since 1991, when they went to play Syracuse and lost. And Spurrier at that point made sure they never left the state again. Let that sink in, because it is 2023. But what makes this even crazier is their last time they won a true non-conference road game was 1989 outside the state of Florida. And the last time they played a true non-conference road game outside the state of Florida and west of the Mississippi River was in 1983. Now, I know I wasn't born in 1983. Seth wasn't born in 1983. So this literally has not happened in our lifetime, folks. This is something that Gator Nation has not experienced in a long, long time. Obviously, when Spurrier got there, they won. They made tons of money. They forced everyone in the swamp, built that motif and mystique, whatever they wanted. And you know what? More credit to them, more power to them. It helps when you have Florida State as one of your non-conference rivals. But this is a big-time event, them traveling outside the state and going west. So that has obviously nothing to bear on the football game, but just think about the schematics of how they've been the past 30 years, basically, and what the playoff has changed, how the college game has changed, where now you've got to travel and play premier opponents left and right and across the country. Now, with that said, when it comes down to the football game, outside the Cam Rising health situation, how does Florida replace Anthony Richardson? He was an offensive machine last year by himself. He could run it. He could throw it. He set up the running game, the play action on him, boots. Everything he brought, the dynamic-wise, helped this team grow and get to where they were. They were 6-7. They had some games they looked pretty impressive in, or at least competitive in. And there's some other games where they looked downright terrible. And then there's games like the Tennessee game where they stormed back and almost won that football game. They were a complete hodgepodge, but Richardson was the one who was able to keep that offense with the mixing parts they had going in the right direction. There's a reason why he got drafted in the top 5 in the NFL. The kid was dynamic. How do they replace him? Seth and I, if you've heard this podcast, we are not big fans of Graham Mertz. Graham Mertz at Wisconsin, Paul Chris says they misused him. People are saying that he could be like the new Michael Penix Jr. or Bo Nix and make a transfer out and new scenery and dominate and put up points. Let's tap the brakes, folks. This guy's a pocket passer, and his ability to read coverage is few and far between. He's going to need a very, very, very strong running game and very simple passes to be successful. When he's at Wisconsin, he had two five-touchdown pass games in his career. One in his very first game versus Illinois and one versus Northwestern. When you remove those 10 touchdown passes in those two games, he then produced a career statistic line of 58% completion percentage, 28 touchdowns and 26 picks in 32 games. That is not some guy I'm screaming, this guy's about to blow the tops off people and tear it up. There's still going to be a lot of struggle in his game. He does not have the legs like Bo Nix. He doesn't have the arm strength like Michael Penix Jr. So where are we going to find this dynamic pass game? It's got to be simplified, and they've got to run the football successfully. He's got to make simple play-action passes and manage the football game. That's how Graham Mertz is going to be successful. So that right there falls not just on him. That falls on the running backs. It falls on the receivers, the offensive line, and Billy Napier to call a better football game. You don't have the dynamic athlete behind there to run around and save you on bad plays or botched plays or broken down plays. You now have got to trust all 11 on that football field, and that means everyone's got to be accountable. Does Florida have athletes? Florida's always going to recruit pretty good players. They're going to have talented athletes there, but offensive line, that's the real question. Can they block? Can they protect Mertz? Mertz can't run away like Richardson did. I want to see how this turns in this season. And this first game against a very, very good defense in Utah, this is going to actually be a very good test for the Billy Napier staple on the program and where they are going forward. Now, it comes down to Florida. If he's not going to be able to, if Mertz is going to be able to throw the football, I do like what they have in the running back room. Trevor Etienne, Montel Johnson Jr., the two of them are a dynamic duo. I don't think they're on the Penn State equivalent, but they're definitely probably one of the top 10 combos in all of college football if these kids get going. They have explosive speed. Who's the third back? I think we're still trying to figure out who the third back was. They thought they had it, but then unfortunately Cam Carroll got an injury and out for the year. That third now is open for anybody. But if those two guys get going at the top, this could be a pretty exciting offense for Florida. If they can get going, it makes probably Mertz better as well. So keep that in mind, that combination. The receiver side, Ricky Pearsall's there. Who else is going to join him? He had a pretty solid year last year, his first time there. But there's the Justin Shorters of the world, the Xavier Hendersons. These guys are all gone. Where's that number 2 receiver going to step up and really help this passing game and make them a little more explosive and draw those safeties out of the box? Because eventually, if you can't throw the football, they're going to drop all 9, 10 in the box, and it's going to be all Mertz by himself, and he's going to have a lot of trouble. So Florida's got to adapt. They've got to grow. This football game is not going to be like last year's. Last year at home, the first game in the Napier area, the place was electric. People were all over the place, and they got 2 goal line basically stands and turnovers that shut down Utah from scoring and escape with the win. They've got to play much more fundamental football on the road. They can't get the crowd behind them because they're going to be in a hostile environment. They've got to be able to function offensively on their own. That's what I want to watch. Billy Napier, have you developed an offense at Florida? You're an offensive guy brought in. Can you get out there and put up 30 points, 28 points on a Utah defense? That's really what I want to see because you're going to have some players. The offensive line, can they get going? Can Mertz be the comfortable quarterback? Can you call plays to get this team in the right down and distance and be able to navigate a football game against Utah? Utah right now, how do you replace, Dalton Kincaid, Cam Rising injury, some guys on the defense, but Willingham just keeps circulating Utes in there. A bunch of no-name dudes show up. They don't have a top 15 recruiting class every year. They get guys in there and they work hard. They buy into the program, and they show up on Saturdays and they play football, in this case, Thursday nights. You've won back-to-back Pac-12s. Can you make it and keep it going? Can you keep this team fueled? Can you keep this team hungry? And can you come out and get revenge? I have a pretty good feeling whether Cam Rising plays or not, Utah will win by double digits. They are going to cover the spread. It's a 6.5, I believe, last time I checked. Florida, I just don't trust the lack of continuity right now in this first game. If this was week 3 or 4, might be better off, but week 1 in a hostile environment, it's going to be tough for Graham Mertz. I don't see them coming out to win. I think Utah gets it done. They play hungry, get revenge, and they cover the spread, whether Cam Rising plays or not.
Fresh, I'm with you on this one. Last year, Utah had 17 passing touchdowns to the tight end. Now, 8 of those went to Dalton Kincaid, but the 2 other guys, Kuth and Yasim, are back, and they just are producing like some of the best tight ends in the country. I mean, if you think about consistently, year after year after year, how great the Utah tight ends are. They're just impressive that they're able to do that over there. I'm with you, Fresh. Everyone knows how I feel about Graham Mertz. I think Graham Mertz was one of the worst quarterbacks in college football last year. And the fact that Florida is trying to prop him up to be something that he's not, I don't think that highly of him. I really don't. Johnson, Etienne, yes, they're good running backs for Florida, but, again, this game was a back-and-forth contest last year when you had Anthony Richardson, and he saved you in that game a few times. That's not happening this year. If you're going to go into Utah, you're going to try to beat the Utes, man. You're going to have to really put this game running away. Like, you're going to need to be up 2 scores going into the fourth quarter because Utah's not going to go quietly into that sweet night, man. Utah and Winningham is going to have this team ready to play. And I'm going to tell you, the Utes are going to be pissed off that they lost to Florida last year. They're going to be angry that the last taste that anyone has from 2022 is that Rose Bowl game where they were just getting absolutely gashed by the Penn State running backs. I think all those things have been worked on over the offseason. I think Utah's going to take control of this game. That 6.5 spread doesn't scare me. I'm going to go Utah by a touchdown. If it goes a little bit more than that, if you start getting double digits, that's where it scares me. But I really think that, hey, Florida wants to say all that they want to say, but Vegas still has them. I think their over-under is at like 6.5 right now for wins for the season. Guys, Vegas is rarely wrong on that. Like, yeah, you'll be maybe 8 wins or maybe it's 6 wins individually, but if you're talking about being within that range, they're not going to be too far off on this. I like Utah in this game big time. If Cam Rising plays, then watch out. Seriously, watch out.
And you kind of look at what Billy Napier, coach under Nick Saban, he's been around under Dabo. They both bring physical offensive lines and physical defensive lines. I don't see what Napier's done right now at Florida to get that point. And if you're going to go play Utah, this is probably your best competition of being a physical football team. If your offensive line cannot own the line of scrimmage, this is going to be a long year for Florida. Now, if they come out there and they win this football game, maybe they're a year ahead. Maybe it's just like last year where it's a blip on the radar. But you've got to come out and set the tone because if you get the blocks blown off of you in this football game, it could be a long, long fall. People are already calling for your name, considering all the money and facilities and resources they've already given you. So there's a lot on Billy Napier in his, 14th career game as a Florida coach. There's high expectations, and he's got to make sure this team shows up on Thursday night.
All right, Fresh, let's go to our next game. I think we both agree that this, outside of maybe the last game we'll talk about, that this possibly has the potential to be the best game of the weekend. And that's Boise State traveling to Washington. Washington, at time of record, is a 14.5-point favorite in this game. This is step one, game number one to Michael Penix Jr.'s Heisman campaign here, folks. Guys, again, it stinks. Washington just lost their running back, Cameron Davis, for the entire season to an injury. That hurts a little bit. But to be honest with you, I don't think it hurts that much for the Huskies. And then here's the reason why, Fresh. You got two amazing wide receivers out there in McMillan and Odunzen. I love them. Dylan Johnson's going to be the first one up to step up to get those carries that Davis would have got. But, the thing I love about Washington is that you're going to force Boise State into nickel and dime packages for this entire game. You're going to be able to spread them out, go three wide at least most of the game, kind of go that spread offense. You can run a little bit of zone read there. I really love this game, though, Fresh. I'll let you go first before I go too deep into my love and kind of hug on Washington State too much.
Well, I think first off, Boise State has a proud football tradition. These kids are going to show up to play, and they actually relish. I think it's a program attribute where they relish playing a Power 5 and beating them. They've done it. They've shown it. It's in the lifeblood of the program of being underestimating these kind of games and showing up when they have to and getting the job done. I've seen them beat Oregon. We've seen them beat Oklahoma. The line that they've dominated the Mountain West for a long, long time. This is another test, though, for this coaching staff because last year was a bump in the they showed improvement. The year before was kind of not Boise State standard. So they've had two less than subpar Boise State championship, less void seasons. How do they show up in this first game? If they come out and get the doors beat off of them, that might do a psyche thing because actually the Mountain West has definitely improved across the board. As we saw, what San Jose State was able to move the football on USC and so on and so forth. If they can come out there and be competitive with a very, very highly ranked, very talented team here in Washington, that says more about the coaching staff in the program, and everybody should watch out for Boise State going forward. That offense, the defense, they're kind of a nameless units. You don't really remember, or no one really knows. There's always some random guys who just show up wearing a blue jersey and some orange on them, and they're not Gator colors, and they can't come out there and put on a show. So don't underestimate Boise State, Washington. If you do, your entire season, literally, your entire season will end. I don't care if you win the Pac-12, the playoffs aren't going to happen. They're going to look back and say you still lost to Boise State. Your season could be over before we even hit technically September 5th, if you don't get it done on Saturday afternoon. You've got to show up, take Boise State seriously, and get it done offensively and defensively. Now, Washington, you have a great quarterback. You have great receivers. You have actually three deep. We talk about the top two. There's three deep, four deep, five deep. You can go on there forever. Kalen DeBoer, you can put points on the board. How is your defense going to show up? There's going to be games where that offense is going to meet, and they're going to get stuck against a very good defense. How is your defense going to help this team win football games? You've got to come out and put up stops early, force turnovers, be aggressive. You have a heck of a schedule. You've got to go out there and set the tone now and clean up little things and get good on defense to be able to be comparable to your offense. Then you can't just hang out there and be an offense. We saw what happened last year with USC. They were just an offense, and when it mattered, they lost. You've got to be a comparable football team. Defense has at least got to show up a couple times during the football game. And you've got to start it versus Boise State coming out there and setting the tone. It's not just about Michael Penix Jr. It's not just about Odunze and McMillan and the rest of the offense. It's about the full squad, both sides of the ball. And if Washington's defense can come out in this football game and show that they want to get noticed too, that sends a major statement to the rest of the Pac-12 and going forward that this team is a fully comparable unit. It's obviously going to be a 60-point Boise State offense as they were under Kellen Moore back in the day, but at least it's a team that can score. If you can come out there and make a statement defensively, it I think gives your team also life of now we've conquered that worry. We actually have a team that can stop somebody. If they come out there and put up 30 points, it's going to keep questions around. Because honestly, if you look back at the San Jose State USC game, San Jose State, they had 21. They scored a touchdown late, but they still put up a ton of yards. They had yards per carry, all that fun stuff. It was not a dominant defensive effort from USC, and there's questions still about the Trojans' defense. They're going to keep following them for a while. Can you silence your own defensive doubters right now in week one, or are you going to keep that lingering over your program? That's what I really want to see in this game. I think you have enough talent to score a million points in this game, but how does your defense actually show up? I take Washington. They're going to cover. They're going to cover the spread. They're going to take care of business. But I really want to see how that defense actually gets after business, if they can actually shut people down.
Yeah, so the question's going to be Boise State allowed under 300 yards passing last year, which was real impressive to me. I took a look at Washington. Washington was averaging over 360 yards passing a game. Not really shocking. I'm giving you those statistics with the Huskies there. It's going to come down to whether about Marco Reed and Jalen Clark, the two outside cornerbacks for Boise State. Are they going to be able to limit? I don't think you're going to be able to stop the passing attack. I really don't. But when it's 3rd and 7, and it's an obvious passing down, and Penix Jr. drops back to pass, last year Washington completed almost 57% of their third downs. They were absolutely phenomenal on third downs last year. Are you able to get a hand on the football and bring the punt team out instead of continuing a long drive for the Huskies? I think that's going to be the breaking point of this game here. I'm watching those outside matchups here, but I really think Penix Jr. is going to go off. I think that this is going to be step one in a Heisman campaign here. I think that he is going to look to show the world that he was the best quarterback in the country last year. I know Caleb Williams has the hardware, and everyone's going to point to that. They're going to point to Bryce Young, CJ Stroud from 22. Go back and look at Penix Jr., folks. Look at everything they accomplished with the Huskies. The kid was absolute fire. This is my favorite pick of the year. I'm really rolling hard with the Huskies this season. I'm going to be seeing what they're going to do. Boise State, I'm going to give you, Trice is going to have to get after Taylon Green. Taylon Green is a good quarterback. He's not a phenomenal. He is really good for the Mountain West. George Holani, again, over 1,000-yard rusher. Are they going to be able to limit him? If Washington's defense comes to play and does very similar things that you saw them doing last season as a team, especially limiting, you take a look that they were averaging only 3.5 yards a carry defensively. If they're able to continue to do those things, watch out for this Washington Huskies team. This could get ugly quick, fast, in a hurry. I don't think it will. I think this is going to be a very entertaining game. And I think it's going to be really fun to watch Washington. But I think Boise State is going to give them everything and anything they can handle during this game.
It's Braylon Trice. I'm happy you mentioned him. He was our unanimous first team all Rational Conference defense. I want to see how he comes out because he obviously has national, prowess across the board. They lost some depth on that team who had pass rushing ability and had some sacks. He's the returner. How does he assert himself as the lead dog, pun intended, and get after it? And maybe, can he get 2 sacks? Can he cause some disruptions and really set the tone as I'm here to stay and I'm not only going to be the Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year, but I'm trying to be National Defensive Player of the Year and bring home tons of hardware in December.
Absolutely. All right, Fresh. Let's go to the game of the week. It's LSU traveling to the state of Florida. We'll see how it remains after the hurricane here. No, we'll be fine. It's in Orlando playing Florida State, the Seminoles. Man, Fresh, this was a classic of a game for us last year. Jaden Daniels is back for LSU. I'm intrigued to see what they're going to be able to do over at LSU. How do they kind of come back after the fact here? This is a game where I wish that I was still living in Ohio. I could go grab me some Dairy Dock ice cream. If you aren't familiar, guys, in MASH, they always talked about Tony Paco's hot dogs. On the Irrational Confidence podcast, Haps always talks about Dairy Dock ice cream out of Ohio. If you haven't been to it, get me a large flurry watching this game because that's how excited I am to see LSU versus Florida State because I think this game, while we've said this is a showcase here, this is a opportunity to show us what you're able to do. Florida State, are you a legit national championship level team? There's some people that say they're really good, but LSU, are you a team that could win the SEC and really make some noise in the playoffs? You want to say, yeah, LSU won the West last year and put some points up against Georgia, but those things are out there. Fresh, tell me where you're seeing LSU and Florida State. Current spread is LSU by 2.5.
First off, what a difference a year makes. We were previewing this game to kick off last year, and it was more like we're only previewing it because it was names LSU, FSU. It wasn't both these teams. There was unknowns under Brian Kelly, tons of transfers. They had 2 walk-ons starting on the offensive line, I think, and then Florida State was coming off of 2 terrible years under Mike Norvell. His job was on the hot seat, and they were in the Bayou, and they both show up, and it had a real clunky start. And somehow it ended with a lot of chaos and the extra point, but it became a dramatic football game. And then both teams took off from there, and they both grew in their own identity as the season went on. And now here we are talking. Both are in the top 10. College football playoff expectations, conference title game expectations. It's a 365 turnaround compared to this time last year where we are now, and it just shows where sometimes you get guys who they finally click, and the coaching staff maybe finally gets them to go, or the players finally show up. And I'm interested to see now with the expectations of these two teams, how do they live up to those expectations? Each of these both teams, they play the last game in the exact same stadium they're playing this game at. They both played their bowl game in Orlando, and now they're playing it here at Camping World Stadium together in Orlando. So they know the stadium well. They don't have to worry about finding a new, where's the locker room at? All that stuff's gone. It's all here. But now the expectations are 10 times higher. You can't come in this game and just mess around like, we're still trying to figure our feet out. The expectations add to that pressure of showing up and having to play perfect every single game. Jordan Travis has been hearing how great he is all year. Johnny Wilson, all these guys. Jared Verse hearing how fantastic they are. Their recruiting right now is through the roof. They're bringing in players left and right. Mike Norvell's running around like he is, Bobby Bowden Jr. Everything is fantastic and all great up there in Tallahassee. If you come into this football game and get curb stomped by LSU, and you go to Clemson in a couple of weeks, and you get beat by the Tigers, we're back to 2021, 2020 Mike Norvell at Florida State, where a bunch of pretenders. You got pressure. You've got to now match that level. You can't just, we're going to wait around. We're on the up and coming. No, Jordan Travis might be gone next year. A lot of these guys might be going out. If you don't win now, some of those recruits might decide, skip town. Like, I'm better off somewhere else. This game means a lot. On the other side, Brian Kelly, you came in there with the fake accent. You tried to acclimate yourself and win people over, and you kind of look like a bumbling fool. You go into that game, and that team looked, I'm not going to lie, I'm sure you even admit it, they looked pretty rough in that first half. Somehow, but you went in the locker room, and you got that LSU football team to focus. You got players in the right spot, and that second half, you looked like a real football team. You lost, but you played much better. Season filled out. You kept moving through. You got destroyed by Tennessee, but you kept growing. You kept the football team growing as a group. And where and behold, you got yourself to Atlanta. You played great. You blew out Purdue in your bowl game. But now where do you go? Everyone, you lost a couple games. No one really cared. Now where do you go? Now Alabama has a target on you because you beat them last year. Now everyone expects you to get back to Atlanta. Now how do you come in this football game and actually beat Florida State? These are what I want to see. It's a matchup of just two coaches and the identities of their program, but also the star power. You got two quarterbacks, Travis and Daniels. You got receivers like Malik Neighbors and Johnny Wilson. You got Harold Perkins Jr. and Jared Verse. You got stars all over the field. But which one of these coaching staffs can harness all that talent and get them to play this football game to win? And then not only this football game, but for the entire season to maintain a focus to get them where they have to go and meet the expectation. Because right now, you're going to be held to a standard. 8-4 for a team going into last year would have been a great year. You 8-4 this year, that's a horrible season, but it really depends on them where you started at, perspective and expectations. And it means you have to match them. You've got to keep a level head the entire time. You can't play out of control. You can't play out of too emotional. You've got to play steady. You can't succumb to, well, you're not 2022 anymore. You're 2023. You got to shake it off and come into this football game. I think Brian Kelly is a better head coach to get that team organized at LSU than Mike Norvell. Mike Norvell has not seen this true success. He had a great year, one good year at Memphis, and when they were good, he pieced out and went to Florida State. He didn't have to coach at Memphis with the expectation. I think Brian Kelly's better fit to manage all the expectations and the talent and drive them in the right direction. He was able to do it at Notre Dame. People don't like what he did at Notre Dame. He never won a national title, but he made Notre Dame a top 8 team every single year. He kept them consistent. I think he does it here at LSU and is able to manage the expectations and the focus. Now we've had this debate. This debate's gone all summer. Who needs this game more? Well, honestly, if one team gets blown out in this football game, I find it very, very tough for them to run the table, much less run the table and get into the playoffs, just because this game will still hang over them. Like the Oregon loss to Georgia last year, as they were making progress and sort of rebounding, people still said, "Yeah, but you got destroyed by Georgia. Would you be a playoff team?" If you lose a close game, it might be able to give you a chance if you ran the table to get into the playoff. But the winner puts themselves in a huge chariot moment where they can pin the flag of, I've beaten a top 10 team in my first game. I have a pretty good schedule I can add to my resume as I go forward. I'm in a great spot. I really think LSU, if they win this football game, it helps them get past maybe a loss to Alabama and keep them in the conversation. If they did somehow navigate past Alabama and got to Atlanta again, it gives them a shot. Florida State, if you lose this football game, your Clemson's really your only true makeup as a big win. And if you have to go to Death Valley, that's a tough one, to host. So it's much more important right now. I think LSU can survive it, but it's much more important for FSU to come out and be focused and play good, because if LSU comes out and takes care of business, they're locked in. I think they're in great shape. With that said, I think LSU takes care of business and they win big. Florida State just cannot handle it
Ooh,
as the game goes on. Tigers take it, easily cover.
wow. Easily cover. Well, I mean, the spread's only 2.5 here, Fresh. So easy cover is 4 points
It will.
more,
I'm going
double
to say
digit.
we're going to say 10, 14 points.
Ooh. Well, something I learned a long time ago from Bobby Boucher is the medulla oblongata. But here we go, Fresh. I think this is the first time, too, ladies and gentlemen, please mark this down. In 3 years of doing a podcast here, the first time Fresh has talked about an LSU game and not said something about crawfish and smelling bourbon and all of that jazz
Well,
right there about the
the game's played in
tailgate.
Orlando. The game's played in Orlando. I mean, it's the smell of
It's,
bourbon sort of reverberates from the swamp there in the bayou. It's a little different.
yeah,
You
so
get,
they still bring that
they don't
stuff
have bourbon
over
at
there.
Disney World. They don't have bourbon at Disney World or on a middle of I-4 in Orlando. It's a different vibe.
You haven't been to the right places then. So, all right, Fresh, let's take a look at this here. I'm with you on a lot of this here. You take a look at Florida State and what they're able to do here. Listen, Jordan Travis is a heck of a quarterback. You take a look at all the skill positions that Florida State has. You take a look at Trey Benson, you take a look at Johnny Wilson. But I think the biggest thing is the Michigan State transfer, Keon Coleman. I think he's going to be huge for it because he adds another weapon there. Are you going to be able, the question really to me is, are you going to be able to protect Jordan Travis in this game? Mason Smith, whatever you want to say about it, is suspended for this game or he's injured for this game. I can't keep track of what's going on with that whole ordeal there. But you take a look in Florida State, that's the one thing that LSU's got to do. They got to be able to pressure the quarterback. They got to be able to make Jordan Travis uncomfortable. If he's uncomfortable in this game, then I think that LSU is going to be able to boat race the Seminoles really, really fast in this one, and it might get out of hand quick, fast, and in a hurry. If they're able to control the football and control the clock in this game, and they kind of take their time, move the ball up and down the field on LSU, then watch out. Really, I think that Florida State's got a good chance to win this game. On the reverse side, LSU, Jaden Daniels is coming back. And I said this the other day to somebody. I said, one of the first things we ever saw was Jaden Daniels for Arizona State. And we said he had like a really good year for Arizona State. And we talked all about him about, hey, what is he going to do the next year at Arizona State? And he kind of fell flat on his face because I think that people got the tape out on him. And was he able to make that level of adjustment? I am worried about that as a repeat offense here for LSU. Is the tape going to be out on Jaden Daniels? Are they going to have to move to Nusamara? And you saw that Garrett was able to do quite a bit in the SEC championship game. Now, again, that game got out of hand pretty quick, but he was able to move the ball up and down the field there. I think that's an honest to goodness conversation that we need to have until like we see Jaden Daniels just completely take control of this job and not have it. Because we do, as much as people want to say like, oh, just look at the tape from the previous year, we can kind of point back to his time over at Arizona State and say, look, he was really good that first year for the Sun Devils. But look at year 2 and look at when defenses started being able to figure out his little tells or anything like this. Freshman, there's an old show that we just passed the 20th anniversary on, and on ESPN. It was the show Playmakers. One of my favorite shows, folks. If you've never seen Playmakers, it's on YouTube. Find yourself a copy. It's one of the best shows you'll ever see, and it's only out for a season on ESPN because the NFL made you cancel it. But there's an episode where the linebacker is going up against a dual threat quarterback, and they are in a parking lot outside of the club, and they see that he double taps the ball right before it passes it. Is Jaden Daniels finally giving up his tells? Is he able to kind of develop that counter punch that you see the really good quarterbacks develop from year 1 to year 2 in a system? I really need to see that. I'm looking to see the running game too with LSU. Josh Williams is there. It looks like he's going to get the nod there. You got Logan Diggs. You got Noah Cain. All 3 of those guys are going to get touches, I think. And then you got the wide receivers. There's talent over there. And really, I don't know how much we haven't talked about Harold Perkins Jr. on the defense for LSU. Everyone wants to talk about Mason Smith, but Perkins Jr. is a phenomenal linebacker. I believe he made our second team all-confidence, all-American team. Yeah, he's absolutely ridiculous. It's going to be a game of whose team can do what they want in this game. I think and again, it can't be just like one drive we do what we want, the next drive. I mean, I'm talking about taking full control of a football game for a full quarter or a full half there and kind of start to put this game out of reach there. I think it matters a lot to Florida State because they don't have as many opportunities down the road. LSU is going to have a chance to go up against an Alabama. LSU is going to have a chance to go up against an A&M. They're going to have other chances to kind of rectify if they lose a game. We talked about earlier in the show, Fresh, if South Carolina lost to UNC and then 2 weeks later go in and beat Georgia. LSU loses to Florida State. They go in and wind up beating Alabama a few weeks later on in the seasons. I know it's a little bit later, but no one's going to remember this loss to Florida State. If Florida State loses to LSU, and if they lose in bad fashion and they beat Clemson, I still think people will talk about that. I think it'll be but. Yeah, you beat Clemson, but you lost to LSU, and it doesn't matter. Oh, you lost to Florida State week 1, but you beat Alabama. And I think that there's a different level of conversation that goes on here. I think LSU is going to get revenge. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. The 2.5, I feel like this is a field goal game. I think 2.5 is a perfect spread for this game. I don't know where I would lie on it because I think that the spread is right there. So, I would probably take LSU to cover it just to kind of want to play that role there. But I think this is going to be a really good game on Sunday night, and it's going to give us a lot to talk about going into the season.
Yeah, this game's going to be a lot of fun. And there's something like LSU, when they play in the state of Florida, whether it's the Swamp or in this case, they bring a mystique. You really just can't explain it, but somehow they just show up and crazy things happen, and they find ways to get wins, whether it's Marco Williams throwing a shoe and giving them a ball, another play. Things like that crazy happen for LSU. So Florida State, if your fans are getting all hyped up, I would keep there's a little, Cajun Bayou, mojo going on that might get you. So be sharp about that. And then, folks, offensive line play on both sides. That's something we both haven't really mentioned, but whichever one can own the trenches, because both defensive fronts are very, very good. Which offensive line can hold their own for 60 minutes, do just enough to keep their teams going forward, will win the football game.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, folks, that is all of the games we got for this weekend. Hey, before you head out of here, hit that subscribe button. Like us, subscribe, leave us a comment wherever you get your podcast from. Leave us those 5-star reviews because you guys know Fresh and I were those 5-star prospects. Make sure you're checking out spinnablesports.com. There's so much content on there. We've dropped everything throughout the year. Fresh went all out. He ranked all sorts of things on spinnablesports.com. So make sure you go in to spinnablesports.com. This podcast is part of spinnablesports.com. So check it out over there. Special thanks to our producer, Drew. Without him, none of this is possible. So we want to send a shout out to him. And we're into our third season. Can't believe we've gone this long here, Fresh. Well over 200 episodes. We're going to bring an episode to you every single week. So make sure you hit that notification bell. Get notified every single time we drop something. And with that, that's all I got. Enjoy the weekend of college football here, folks. It's going to be a great one.
College football is back, folks. Enjoy week 1. Bye, y'all.